looking obviously at Perth is the main one where I kind of went, holy cow. If you look at the change in dwelling values last month, it was just 2% increase in Perth. Obviously, that means seven for the quarter and 18.5% annually. And if we're kind of looking around the country, you're going 0.2% and 0.1% increase in January in Sydney and Melbourne, respectively. So that's kind of pulling down that average. But Brisbane is at 1.6 and Adelaide at 1.2. So besides the big two, we're still getting crazy numbers of increase. Obviously, Sydney 0.2 for the quarter, Melbourne 0.1 for the quarter, Brisbane 5.1, Adelaide 4.7. Annually, Sydney 6.4, Melbourne 5.4, Brisbane 15.7, Adelaide 9.7. So I guess if you kind of look at that all together throughout the combined capitals, 0.7% of an increase just last month, 2.1% over the last quarter, and 9.2% annually. And if we include regional as well in that, it's 0.8 over the last month, 2.4 for the quarter, and 9.4 annually. So I think the numbers very much painting a picture of what we're seeing and knowing. But our friends at Coality have basically summarized it for us. Basically, yeah, the Australian property market is experiencing strong price growth, marking its longest uninterrupted growth cycle since 2015. Driven by chronic housing undersupply and a robust demand, it's pushing medium house prices to record highs in most capital cities. Sydney's median is now 1.76 million, and Perth has recently joined the $1 million club, which I think we all
Woo!
saw everywhere, right?
That's
Yeah.
big news, isn't it? $1 million in medium house price for little old Perth.
Million smackaroos.
That's bloody
I
incredible.
was in Kwinana, the average is 850 there now. So
What?
anyway, yep. Every
Holy
agent in
crap.
Kwinana was saying 850. Anyway, national house prices surged 9.6% and units 6.8 in 2025. And in 2026, a further rise is forecasted between the 6 to 8% nationally. Sorry, excuse me. Why this is? We know it's just supply shortage. A critical lack of housing supply and record low rental vacancy rates are key underlying drivers. Construction costs are high. New building approvals remain well below the levels needed to meet the population growth. I think something which was very much speculation, but is now, as you said, we're going to go into, is the interest rate impact. Following a series of rate cuts in 2025, buyer confidence increased, but there's obviously a speculation that the RBA is going to continue this rate hike in 2026 to try combat inflation, which could hopefully temper the price growth. On the other side of it, I know, Ryan, this is very much your perspective when it comes to where the market's going, is affordability challenges. Worsening affordability is a major concern, particularly for first home buyers. The first home guarantee scheme has been great, but it's also by helping some buyers get into the market, but it's also adding more pressure when it comes to the lower value segments. It's, yeah, creating that real big pinch. On the rental side, and there's a lot of BDMs, and I think this was very much an interesting part for me, was rental vacancy rate came in at 1.7% nationally for January, up from a record low of 1.5 in September. So a little bit of help there, but still very much below the average of 2.5%. Excuse me. Every capital city except for Canberra has recorded a vacancy rate below their 10-year average, which is just adding even more pressure. With such low vacancy rates, Quality's national rental index was up 0.6% in January, the strongest monthly change in rent since April last year. Similarly, the annual pace of rental increase picked up, recorded at 5.4% over the last 12 months to January, which is adding about $35 a week to the median rent. The past 5 years has seen 42.4% jump in weekly rents nationally, adding approximately $204 to the median rent. And just as a little bit of context, the previous 5-year period ending in January 2021 saw rises of 8.2 compared to 42.4. The scary bit is although rents have risen, home values have increased at a faster rate, placing some gradual downwards pressure on the gross rental yields. At 3.56%, the national gross rental yield hasn't been this low since September 2022. This has been a deterrent for investors, with mortgage activity from this segment comprising 41%. Hang on. From this segment comprising 41% demand based on the ABS data in September. Investors have their eyes on opportunities for capital gain, so it will be interesting to see if investor demand tapers if value growth continues to ease. I think to summarize, last two bits is normalizing population growth. After several years of exceptionally strong net overseas migration, the catch-up phase of population growth has moderated back towards a longer run average. While still looking for underlying housing demand, the step down removes some of the extreme pressures on the housing demand. Overall, the year ahead is shaping up to be one of softer, more uneven growth. Demand is likely to be dampened by affordability and credit headwinds, while supply constraints and a still resilient labor market will act as important stabilizers. In this environment, a slowdown in value growth rather than a sharp reversal reveals to be the most probable path unless economic or credit conditions deteriorate more than expected.
There we go.
That's it.
Some amazing key stuff there. Obviously, the big one being the $1 million threshold being obviously broken through in Perth. That is fascinating. Rent increases higher than ever. I think that's pretty scary, but obviously property prices increasing faster, which is incredible. I think that 3.56% yield for investors and 41% of the market being investors, I thought that is fascinating statistics, and these are the statistics we can talk to our sellers about and let them know what's going on. But investors are still, for obvious reasons, investors are still strong because of the capital gains that they are receiving based on the property prices going up. So still very, very buoyant. Let's have a look at quickly the Perth reflection. And then I'll talk to you about some anomalies with Perth before we go into some great achievements. So first of all, so 18 Perth sales transactions last week were down 18.3% on the previous week. So obviously we had a really busy week in January, and being that it was the end of the month and also the beginning of the new year, calendar year, that's dropped off a little bit. So 790 transactions reported last week. House sales were up 19% to the week prior. Unit sales were up 17.4%, and land sales were up 14.5%. So there was 2,527 properties for sale. So it is creeping up compared to late last year, which is good because critically low still, which is 2.4% higher than the previous week, 3.6 compared to the week prior. Last week's total figure of properties available was 21% higher than 4 weeks ago, but 48.8% lower than what was seen this time last year. So 48% lower than this time last year, but 21% higher than 4 weeks ago. On the rental market, 772 properties leased last week, which is 27.6% higher than the previous week, 55% higher than 4 weeks ago, and 8% higher than a year ago. So still a critically low sort of inventory market, pushing sale prices and, of course, rents and scarcity through the roof. Just before we go on to our mover and shaker for the month of January, I did some research because I wanted to be able to report back to you guys about what is driving the Perth market, because I was starting to get a little bit puzzled with the Perth market, why we're still cranking on. Other than the obvious reasons, now the biggest reason I've noticed in 2025, we were the #1 state for immigration and migration. So people moving to Perth from Australia and internationally, Perth was #1 on the hit parade. We had over 40,000 people move to Perth, Western Australia. That is fascinating. If you compare the size of New South Wales, Sydney, and Melbourne, Victoria, compared to little old Perth, for us to receive 40,000 people is massive. It's massive. Now, when I researched further about why that is, it wasn't clear. There was no massive changes in mining and mineral prices, which sees mining booming any more than normal. And in studying further, all I could see and understand was that since COVID, Perth, Western Australia, really stood out as a town, as a state, being isolated, having control of the state, and what it has done from my studies and my personal opinion, actually, is that we are now standing out like one of those real blue chip states in the world, like Monaco, Paris, and one of the interesting ones that I studied was Vancouver, Canada. Vancouver, Canada, the average house price in Vancouver is $2.3 million. So you think our $1 million is a lot? Vancouver, Canada is $2.3 million. And there is no explanation for that. It is one of the most unaffordable cities in the world. But it's also one of the most beautiful cities. It's one of the most controlled cities. It's one of the most safest cities. So all of these things are starting to creep in to be potential reasons why we are going against the grain, because I couldn't really place it before this. Now, I've always known Perth's a great place to live, and I've lived here for nearly 25 years. That's another thing that's happened. 24 years in Australia, woohoo, for me. So that's a big celebration, and next year I'll be celebrating even harder with a 25 year. But so I know how beautiful it is to live here, and I think the penny has dropped with the rest of the country and potentially the rest of the world. So look, that doesn't mean that we'll go against the grain in every type of downturn, every type of market, but it certainly does explain, amongst other things, of course, like still a reasonable cost of living, the mining, the beautiful place, the obviously being so remote, and all those factors, I think, to add to the Perth market traveling so well, I think definitely is because it's a bloody beautiful place to live, and people are catching on. And I think Facebook, everybody's promoting how beautiful Perth is, and people are starting to see it and go, holy shit, I want to go live there. And obviously I deal with, dozens of coaching clients, and the people coming in and buying are coming in from everywhere, which is fascinating. And they're buying $2, $3, $4 million properties, just cash. So we're talking about really wealthy people coming to Perth because it's a beautiful place to live, and they want to stake their claim. Anyway, that's my little investigation, which I report. Thank you, Matt. Give Matt a round of applause. Really appreciate your report, mate, and thank you so much for the hard work that you're putting in. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of self-belief and grit, as our mate Jimmy Barnes says, and